How we do this, we are the truest. Got these fangs super sharp, your shit toothless. Cold-hearted, yeah we ruthless. All the ghouls in the cut, let's get ghoulish. In the graveyard, acting foolish. Finna dance with the devil to no music. Cold-hearted, yeah we ruthless. All the ghouls in the cut, let's get ghoulish.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of a podcast called Ghoulish. I am Max Booth, an undead host, and on today's episode of the podcast, I am talking to Josh Millican, who is the filmal editor-in-chief of Dread Central. On today's episode, we'll talking about his time with Dread Central, and honestly, just the topic of whole journalism in general. We're talking about what it takes to operate a website like Dread Central and Bloody Disgusting and so forth. And we're talking a bit about what Josh has been up to now that he's left Dread Central. At one point in the podcast, he teases a recent job he got involving writing the biography of a certain celebrity. At the time of the episode, he wasn't allowed to say who, but since we talked, the news has kind of come out, so he's given me permission to name the person in the beginning of in the intro of this episode, and that is Richard Elfman, aka Danny Elfman's brother. So he's writing a biography of Richard Elfman. That's the big news, folks. Hold on to your hats if you can believe it. That's what's going on. That's pretty much all I have to say. Yeah. So if you want to listen to a person involved in spooky journalism, talk about spooky journalism, well, guess what? This is the podcast you should have downloaded. You've come to the right place. Congratulations. Enjoy.
Let's just do it, man. Let's just fly by the seat of our pants.
Oh, I have pants on. Do you?
I do. I'm wearing some jeans. How about you? What are you wearing?
I have Creep Show pajama pants.
Nice.
That I got from
cool.
Fright Rags.
You know what? Fright Rags, I had to cut them off because it was I was basically going to start giving them a percentage of my salary. I'd be like, no more Fright Rags. We're divorcing for a while.
I used to buy a lot of hats from them, but I had to stop because I don't know who they make full hats with, but it's not the greatest quality. I discovered if I sweat at all in a Fright Rags hat, it just leaves a sweat stain on top of the hat.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wear baseball caps, unless they're extra large. I had a big head to begin with before I grew all this padding on top of it. So yeah. It's been a while since I've sported one of those cool baseball caps or trucker caps.
For those listening, you can't see the episode, but Josh had some tremendous dreadlocks going on. How long did it take you to grow those?
I grew my hair for a year or two before I locked it up, and it's been locked up for about 3 or 4 years. Let me tell you something crazy about dreadlocks. First of all, a lot of white people will come up to me and say, "How do I get dreadlocks like yours?" And I say, "Well, you got to be reborn with curly hair because my hair is very curly, even when it's not locked up." But one of the funny things about dreadlocks is in the first year or two, they'll shrink to almost half their size. So I had my hair grown out for 2 years, but then for the first year and a half, 2 years of having dreads, my hair is just constantly shrinking. So it's a really weird process. Yeah. But, it's been about 5-6 years total in the evolution of Josh's dreadlocks.
So did anyone ever make any puns oh, you look at Dread Central and then you have dreadlocks?
It's so fitting. No puns, but the funny story is when I went to South by Southwest with the team in 2018, we're all walking down the street in our in Austin in our Dread Central t-shirts, and like this woman walks by us and she goes, "Oh, okay, well you have dreads, that makes sense." And she's like, "Yeah, I figured Dread Central was some website about dreadlocks and hair care, and no one has dreadlocks except this one guy, me. So I get it now. It's like no, not related, purely coincidental."
Well, I mean, if
I like
Dread
the dreads,
Central ever wanted to rebrand, I mean, focusing on like hygiene be a good move.
There you go. If they wanted to make a sister site, hey, it's worth noting up front, that my biggest claim to fame at this point, my internet fame comes from the fact that I was the editor in chief of Dread Central for 2 years until just really recently. I was managing editor for a year before that, so kind of like I've run the site for as long as anyone since Steve Barton stepped away. So I think that's pretty important. That's my claim to fame. But like I mentioned, if you're paying attention to the tense of the words, I'm no longer with Dread Central. I'm moving on to do my own thing. So, we can talk about Dread Central. We can talk about what I got going next. But yeah, my dreads are kind of only slightly affiliated with Dread Central these days.
Right. Yeah. I'm hoping to talk about both if that's cool with you.
Yeah, sure.
I would love to begin. I know on the intro post you wrote on Dread Central when you began 2 years ago now, I believe. Mm-hmm. You posted how you began by writing a blog that had 50 views a day and whatnot. So tell me about this blog that you started. Like, what was it called and what were you writing?
It was called Blood and Guts for Grown-Ups. And it was kind of because it was based on the whole idea that, horror fans had a bad reputation. They were seen as unsophisticated. And this is before there was the term, elevated horror and things like that. This was back in 2012. So, I just started doing that. And, I got to give credit where credit's due. It's because my ex-wife, I was married at the time, and Netflix had just released some of their first, they had just gone to streaming as opposed to purely sending you the DVDs. So I was, open to so many horror movies, foreign horror movies, especially French horror films, Martyrs Inside, things like that. My wife at the time hated horror movies, but I'd watch one of these crazy movies and I would tell her about them and she would just be like, that's crazy. That's crazy. She didn't want to see them. She loved hearing me talk about them. So she goes, you should write about these horror movies. So I said, okay, well. So that's how I started Blood and Guts for Grown-Ups, and just kind of developed, because I come from a university background. I was a literature major, so I'm used to writing, 2,000 word essays about a book. So instead I'd write 2,000 word essays about a film that I saw and that made an impression on me. I tried to do one a day for a while. It was fun. And then I went to working for some websites, a bunch of websites, throughout the early 2010s. And landed, through will and determination and luck, landed at Dread Central.
How did Dread Central approach you? Or maybe you approached them with the editor-in-chief. Yeah,
I approached them because, when you're an up-and-coming horror journalist, you want to either write for Bloody Disgusting, Dread Central, or Fangoria. So I think Fangoria was going through some turbulent times at the time. I think that was before one of their first hiatuses. Bloody Disgusting, I was always just a little too intimidated. They're kind of the biggest, and Dread Central under the leadership of Steve Barton just always had such an inclusive feel to it. It was like an ongoing conversation. It was and Steve himself would even call it the island of misfit toys, where it's everyone's welcome, and you can look however and talk however, and it's a really fun open safe space. So I was back in 2016. I'm hitting up Steve all the time. I'm pitching articles and things like that. I'm I want to do a regular column, and I did do a regular column for a while. It was called Want to See Something Really Scary, from that line from the Twilight Zone movie, and I'd find some really creepy like internet video or something to share, and it was like a bi-monthly, so I get twice a month column.
Of those videos you shielded in the column, what is like the one that still stands out to you that people need to check out?
The one that gets to me the most is the one kind of from the story behind it. It's the video. Okay, there are these divers who are going down into this shipwreck. This ship sank 5 days ago, a week ago maybe, and they're going down, to pull the bodies out and everything. And there's this diver, and he's got his camera on, and he grabs one of the bodies floating, and it grabs him back. There's a guy who's been alive under there for 5 days. You can find the story on the internet. He was the cook on this ship, and he just found his way into an air pocket and had survived. So it's kind of like the video is scary as fuck, because like you can imagine being this diver and you're going to remove a body and the body grabs you, but then the story itself is scary as fuck. Do a little Google search, you'll find out all about it.
Yeah, I'm sure anyone listening is already typing onto little keyboards right now trying to find something about it. That's insane. What do you think that guy's up to these days?
I mean, I think he probably gave up, sailing, probably tried to be a cook on the mainland. That's what I'd do for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't step foot on the liquid again.
No.
I wouldn't even drink it, which would kill me probably. So you're doing these columns. What happens next?
Then Jonathan Barkon became the managing editor, and he and I kind of like struck up a relationship on Twitter. And he's the one who first invited me to their weekly writers meetings. And that was just so great. I don't know how other sites do it, but the way Dread Central did it at the time and the way I did it when I was editor-in-chief is, the writers and the contributors would all meet once a week on Google Meets, which is like Zoom. This is before the pandemic even. We were doing this sort of thing. And I just loved it. It would be a time where Steve or Jonathan would just tell us what was going on with the company. They'd talk about, things that were going on, that we should all know about. And then they would kind of tell us what kind of assignments were available, like who wants to interview so-and-so, who wants to review such and such, and I loved it. And then it was also an opportunity to pitch editorials. So, I did that for 6 months or a year or something. And when Jonathan took over as editor-in-chief after Steve Barton left, I was lucky enough to get hired or promoted to managing editor.
That's great.
Yeah, as managing editor, I got into the daily news game, which I loved, and I continued that as editor-in-chief. A lot of editors-in-chief don't do the daily news, but I think that Brad Miska and John Squires over at Bloody Disgusting really kind of like changed what editor-in-chief means, at least in a horror context, because they're the main voices of Bloody Disgusting. So Steve Barton was also one of the main voices, the main voice at Dread Central when he was there. Jonathan Barkon, as the editor-in-chief, kind of stepped back, and he, gave the assignment. He farmed out the assignments. That's how I started doing most of the main news. When he left and I was promoted to editor-in-chief, I kind of wanted to keep the Steve Barton vibe alive, and that's why I kept with the news and making Dread Central primarily a news feed that also included great editorials and original stuff.
So you go from writing this blog by yourself, eventually you move up to the editor-in-chief of Dread Central. Well, you will now in control of other writers writing for the website. I mean, like, how did that change feel to you? Did you easily adapt to it?
I mean, it felt amazing. And I easily adapted to it because I was living the dream. I'm sure you understand, with literature and screenwriting and things like that. When you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And that was the case with Dread Central, because it's like I wanted to be affiliated with Dread Central before I was. And so then to have kind of like, be working full time, editor-in-chief felt great. It was more just working full time, where that was my gig. I didn't have to look different and pull some office gig, put my hair up in a hat and things like that. I worked at Dread Central. I could look how I want. I was a professional horror nerd. So, it just felt amazing. It was just wonderful.
What difference? I mean, you began in 2019, right? With that,
editor-in-chief in
yeah, with
2019.
that role. Yeah. So then 2020 comes along and COVID hits. Any differences you noticed
Oh
in the
hell
way?
yeah!
Yeah.
It was really scary. In 2019, while I was mostly managing editor, but then I became editor in chief. I probably spent a third of the year on the road. Between conventions where we went and we sold Dread Presents or DVDs and things like that, to going to film festivals. I was on the road a lot. And then 2020, the travel came, and it ended all of that. But here's the crazy thing, Max, and maybe it's the same for you. The other part of my life was always just being at home, chained to the computer. So except for the fact that I wasn't traveling anymore, my work life didn't change much during the pandemic because I was already working remote from a computer over the internet. And I'm already a bit of a hermit by nature.
Yeah.
So, the pandemic's been a lot easier for me than it was for most people. But yeah, in terms of Dread Central, it was kind of scary. It's like all of a sudden we were like, okay, well, now that we're not going out, now that we can't do this like community outreach anymore, what are we going to do to kind of change with the times? A lot of it was just business as usual, let people know that, they can still come here for horror several times a day, and we're still going to, be giving them the great editorial content they want. But, one of the things we did that I was super proud of was our Dissecting Horror panel series, which was basically just like, Zoom calls, but, with themes, or about specific movies. It's where you and I met for the first time.
Yeah.
When we did a Dissecting Horror episode about We Need to Do Something. And, that was just great. We started those in April of 2020. So, really not that long after lockdown, we really kind of got on it. And I got to thank Jordan Van Nitzer, who came to Dread Central with the idea. He is now with Impact PR. It's his own company. At the time, he was with Projection PR. And Jordan, I'm really sorry if I got those two backwards. But he came to me and to Dread Central with the idea. And he put together the panels, the guests, and we just provided the platform, and I hosted them. And it was just a great time. We probably did 40 of them. Yeah, it's great.
That's awesome. That's a good achievement.
Yeah, I hope they continue at Dread Central, and I'd even be willing to continue hosting them at Dread Central if they'd have me. So, that was a ton of fun. But yeah, it's still, at the time, and then in 2021, it seemed like we're all okay, we're going to get back to normal this year. And, we didn't get back to normal in 2021. So now I think we're really going to start facing in 2022, the new normal. Whatever that's going to be. So it's an exciting time for journalism, and it'll be interesting for me to see either where I land or to just see how horror journalism continues to evolve, because it's changed a lot just in the time that I've been doing it since 2012.
I imagine, just like from my perspective, who is not affiliated with any of these news websites, but does read them, how like frustrating and confusing it might have been with all of these constant release dates, rescheduling constantly, and any news you might have prepped suddenly no longer will make sense because the movie's not going to come out for another 6 months or so.
I mean, I wouldn't say frustrating. It was an unexpected thing.
Yeah.
News is so reactive. Because you're always trying. It's always time sensitive. Even when you're taking as much time as you think is necessary to edit something and to include the graphics and everything. If timeliness isn't a factor, then you're not really in a journalistic mindset. So because it's a situation where there's always something to do and you've always basically kind of got to hurry, there's always a bit of a fire under your ass. So when, release dates change, well, that's actually a pretty big news story too. So an announcement like that is actually going to traffic pretty well because, people are going to be disappointed, but they want to know, and then they're going to share that article.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So do you want to talk about leaving Dread Central and what kind of happened with that?
I mean, it's bittersweet, but the thing is, I had a baby in October. So I'm a first-time father. That's why I sport this mug that I was showing off earlier that says the man, the myth, dad, the man, the myth, the legend. Because obviously, word got out rather quickly, and this just arrived on my doorpost just a few days after I became a father. So, it was a perfect time for me to, first of all, go on hiatus, concentrate on my little man and my wife. But when I come back, I don't want to do the editor-in-chief thing anymore. I don't want to have the 60, 70-hour weeks anymore.
Yeah.
So it's, tried to find a place for me at Dread that kind of made sense. And, after being editor-in-chief, it's like I really just wanted to leave on top. One of the things I did that I'd love to talk about, just so people who want to learn a little bit more about Josh Millican, right before the pandemic, not only was I the newly promoted editor-in-chief at Dread Central, but I just launched my own web series called Chronic Horror. I don't know if you've looked into that. So, it's the show where I would bring a guest on. It's a talk show. I was going to interview people. I bring a guest on, interview them a little bit. Then we would get high, get high, eat munchies, and watch a horror movie. So we did 8 episodes of that. It was a ton of fun. And then the pandemic hit. We were going to record a new batch of episodes for a season 2. And it just didn't happen because all of a sudden, especially the first year of the pandemic, everything just stopped. There were no COVID protocols or anything. Certainly couldn't do something, with people smoking in a room together, eating together, being right up in each other's faces, screaming at horror movies. And now it's been 2 years, so I do want to relaunch it in 2022. But, with the new normal, it's going to have to evolve into something else. So people should check out Chronic Horror and, maybe, look for something, a new incarnation, something new in 2022 from me, Josh Millican, because what I loved about Chronic Horror and what I love about my own personal niche is that, I'm right at the intersection of horror movie fandom and cannabis culture. I authentically embody both worlds. And I think there is a lot of overlap between the two.
I think so. Yeah. Where do you live? What state do you live in?
I'm in California and I'm in Los Angeles. So, okay. I'm here in the entertainment capital of the country, ready to make stuff happen. Call me.
Also in a state that's legal.
Yeah, exactly.
I live in Texas, my friend.
Oh, man. It's got to be legal over there sooner or later. I mean, they see how much money Colorado and California are getting in taxes for it. Texas wants that sweet, sweet money too. Believe me.
They do. You did 8 episodes, you said, and it's available on YouTube?
8 episodes of Chronic Horror.
Great.
It's on YouTube. It's on the Dread Central YouTube channel. I think it's also on, I don't know. It's on like Tubi or something, one of those.
Yeah.
I don't know. You can search it. You can find it somewhere.
They can find it. How do you think? So when you do bring this back, like, how do you think you would adapt to the new normal? Like, what changes would you do?
I got a few ideas. One of them would be to, maybe, I don't want to give away too much. Someone's going to, I'm kidding. One of the things would be to maybe have it take place at a drive-in, an actual drive-in, is something with open air. And now there are COVID protocols. Any production, any legitimate production is going to have a COVID compliance officer. You're going to, make sure people are tested before they come to sets, and we'll just do that. One of the first set visits I did, when they started doing them again after the initial lockdown, they actually made me wear this like bubble thing. It like looked like one of those clear plastic hampers, just like turned upside down. I was like, whatever, I'll jump through hoops because at least we're making movies again. I mean, you made your movie during COVID. So
we did, we had a lot
there were more hoops to jump through, but I'm glad you at least were moving forward and not on lockdown, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was the only movie set I've been on, so I can't compare it to anything. But we had a COVID safety officer on set at all times. We were tested 3 days a week. We had a mask and a face shield on at all times. It was strict, but it needed to be, and we got the stuff done.
Yeah, and if that's what I have to do to bring my show, my cannabis / horror show, back to reality, it's a small price to pay when you think about it. So, potentially doing it in a new setting, doing it with these new protocols, real easy. But the thing is, it's like everything's changed. The new normal I mentioned before is like consuming cannabis is different. Are we going to no longer pass pipes and pass joints? There are some challenges to being a stoner during a pandemic, and we can hit on all that because, maybe COVID won't go away in 2022 either.
kind of don't think it's gonna.
I was one of the first people, remember at the end of 2020, everyone was acting like 2021 was going to be magical and it was somehow going to be over. Yeah. And I remember last January, I called it. I said, I'm counting this whole year out, Yeah. And I feel like I was unfortunately right. Yeah, I'm kind of feeling the same way about 2022. It's like, don't count any chickens before they're hatched,
Well, it's kind of what you've been talking about, like with everything going on the past 2 years. I don't even think it's wise anymore to have the mindset of, well, when this is over, we will move back to how it used to be. I think at a certain point, we just have to adapt because this is reality now. And I don't see it changing much.
I agree with you, unfortunately. I hate to be pessimistic, but then again, you and I are both kind of like in a nihilistic industry, one that faces fears head on and processes fears, that are reflected in society. So,
I mean, that's the tagline of the podcast. We bring pessimism to you.
There you go. You go. Well, I've always considered myself something of a utopian nihilist. I mean, obviously we're all going to hell, but that doesn't mean we can't be really kind to each other and party it up in the meantime. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to live life.
Yeah.
So we have this cannabis show. You mentioned you want to get into more acting. What about writing? Will the writing go from here?
Well, I've got some exciting writing prospects to talk to you about. First of all, I might have something for you because I think I remembered on Twitter you said you were going to open up for Novella Submissions.
Yes.
For your publishing company. So I might have something for you because it was about 3 years ago now, I wrote a novella and, it's just kind of like sitting there, and I'm like, oh, when Max opens up his submission, I might send it to him. I don't know if this has ever happened to you. Have you ever had something that you wrote and set aside and then you revisited it? Because I went back and I revisited it. And oh man, I hated it. I couldn't get past the first 2 pages. I was like, oh, this is so awful. Do I want to show this to Max? But I still might, because I've got a finished novella. So I'm going to send it to you and you're going to look at it. But also I've been, I don't want to say hired because it's it's a collaboration, but and there's no contract or anything yet, but it is happening. I'm writing a biography. And I can't say about who yet, but it is somebody whose work spans music and film, horror films, and theater and literature. So I'm really excited. And a biography is something I've never considered before, but I'm really excited about. And I think it's such a natural segue as a journalist to go from writing daily news and to doing short interviews to doing, a biography, which basically is a long form interview. So I've got an amazing subject who's really exciting as a biographer. I couldn't ask for anything more. And I've got his full cooperation. We're going to set up some, a bunch of interviewing, just going to tape it all. And, people are going to be really exciting. I think that, especially some aspects of his life are, really culturally relevant. There's a lot of mystery about some of his earliest projects. And this will be the first really historically accurate record of certain eras of artistic history. So I'm really excited to be working on it.
Have you begun writing this yet?
I've written sort of my introduction to it, and I've got an outline to it. Basically right now I'm working on a pitch deck for a publisher. I'm doing a little bit of marketing research as well. I don't even really know how all this goes. I'm figuring it out as I go along. But I'm basically putting together a 2,000, 3,000 word package, that I would send to a publisher to hopefully get an advance, but at the very least, just get a deal.
Right. I've never written a biography about anyone, but I just thinking about it now makes me so nervous of oh man, I'm writing about someone's real life. And do you have any nervous about that at all? I was
so nervous, in the early days, I was afraid to suggest too much, and is he going to think that I'm exploiting him, and things like that. And then when I'm actually showing him outlines and sample chapters and things like that, I'm so scared that he's going to be like, this is crap, or you don't get it. But he's so great first of all, this guy is so great. And second of all, he actually did say at one point, maybe it was a given to him, but I needed to hear it. He said, I'm going to let you quarterback this. You know, it was like, oh, thank God, you know, that he has the faith in me to put together this and to frame it how I'm going to frame it and to be the filter, the voice of, you know, what is his story. You know, it's a wonderful opportunity.
That's exciting.
I mean, yeah, you know, think about it too. Think about, you know, who would you like to, you know, be the expert on and to tell the story of, and, you know, find that person. Because it was really kind of lucky for me to, you know, I started thinking, okay, I want to be a biographer. You know, who would I want? And it's like, I know this person who makes such a great subject. And like I said, just thankfully he's down.
Yeah. So did you have anything else writing wise you wanted to bring up that you have on the docket?
No, just that, you know, kind of, you know, look out for an announcement on, you know, once this is official and once we've got some ink on the whole thing saying that this is going to happen. I can't wait to let people know what's coming down the pike. But, you know, yeah, I'm just, and I'm open to, you know, working in journalism again, probably more on an editorial tip or reviews. I just can't see myself getting back into news reporting when I've got a beautiful baby boy to take care of, you know?
Yeah. Priorities, man.
Exactly.
How do you see journalism in this genre, like, evolving from here? I mean, where do you see it going?
I'm really not sure. You know, I definitely feel like we're kind of like at an impasse with horror journalism. You know, I feel like a lot of things happened in the last 10 years that have kind of changed the landscape. One being that horror is just so much more popular now than it used to be. There's much more mainstream horror. So, you know, things have kind of like consolidated, you know. You've got Bloody Disgusting really killing it in terms of, you know, the quantity and quality of news coming out. And you've got a lot of other sites that are, you know, just kind of like nipping at their heels. And you've got some, you know, people taking different approaches. You've got some sites trying to go with more video content. You've got some sites that are, you know, aren't horror specific, you know, cover everything. You know, one of the best sites for horror news these days is MovieWeb, and they're not horror specific, but it just reflects how popular horror is in cinema in general. So
what makes this site the best one?
What makes Bloody Disgusting the best?
No, you said MovieWeb.
They're one of the best. They're one of the best.
Yeah, I don't know anything about them, so that's why I'm curious.
Yeah, no, I actually worked for them for a while too. They've got really high standards in terms of you know, the news. They don't publish articles that are under 500 words. So even if it's just like kind of like a quick piece, it requires their writers to do a little bit of a deeper dive. But to that end, they pay well per article. You know, and they actually did something when I was there. This was years ago, so I can't speak to what they do now, but they actually did some sort of thing where it's like, you know, the writers got a percentage of the ad revenue that the article generated. So it was really cool. It was like earning royalties, you know, on your article, in addition to getting a flat fee on top of it. So I really like the way they did it. But no, they run a tight ship. They have great writers. Every article is at least 500 words, so it's meaty. And like I said, they reflect the fact that horror is really popular in cinema in general. So they've got everything, you know, it'll cover Pitch Perfect and whatever the newest Pixar movie is, you know, and things like that. But there's a ton of horror because when you look at film and television these days, there's a ton of horror.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm excited to check out that website. That's really cool. The way they treat the contributors. You don't see that too often. Yeah. Good folks, good site, MovieWeb. Check it out. And you know, they also run TV Web, you know, so you know they're run at the same time, parallel, but you know, you got your TV and you got your film stuff there. So you could say they're spinning many webs.
Exactly. But in terms of the best, you know, it's no secret. It's Bloody Disgusting, and I say that not with as somebody who has worked for a competing site, just as somebody who's an objective horror fan. They have incredible writers. John Squires is a machine. You know, you've got a journalist who's able to kick out, you know, 12 news articles every day. think he's on the East Coast, which I know helps because he's up bright and early getting all the stories and getting everything done, while I'm still asleep over here on the West Coast, with my bong hangover or whatever. So, it's just such a great site. They look great and they just have built so well over their 20 years. So objectively, it's like we all know that Blade Discussing is the best. It doesn't mean that I don't love Dread Central with all my heart. Dread Central is Pepsi to their Coca-Cola or whatever,
Wow.
let's call it like I see it, but it's a good alternative.
So, I mean, I would love to know like what a day in the life of a news editor is like, because I imagine you will just constantly refreshing things. You have a lot of Google alerts set up. I mean, it must be exhausting.
That's pretty much it. Yeah. It is. When I was at my best, when it ran the best, it was when I had a assistant editor who I could really count on. For me, it was Mike Sprague. Sprague. I've never been sure how to pronounce his last name, but he lived in Florida and he was my assistant managing editor. So, while I'm asleep, because I would get up at 9 a.m. before I'm even awake, he's up getting all the best top stories of the day. He's as good as John Squires in terms of somebody who can kick out quality articles. He's great with graphics and things like that. So, I'd wake up around 9, which was noon on the East Coast. There would already be 10 great articles up there. I'd look through my email. Editor-in-chief, it's a lot of going through email. You got a lot of people coming at you. Hey, can you show our trailer? Can you plug our book? Can you, this independent film, that independent film? And that's where I really came in. Editor-in-chief was a lot more of like the independent side. It was the kind of stories, people were approaching me and I wanted to get things out there that you weren't seeing on Entertainment Weekly, and Bloody Disgusting. I wanted to be a little more niche. I wanted to go down a little more of the darker avenues. And I'm proud to say that, when I was running at my best, I think, you would look at Bloody Disgusting because you have to look at Bloody Disgusting. They're the best. And you'd look at Dread Central on the same day, and there might be 30-40% difference between the two sites. There was a significant amount of stuff on Dread Central that you weren't seeing on Bloody Disgusting because they were more mainstream and getting more of the big stories. And I was going more into the nooks and crannies. But I still did cover the mainstream stuff with Mike. But then, once it came to the afternoon, when you kind of like hit our number quotas, it's a lot of just refreshing, seeing what's out there because, news doesn't stop at 4 p.m. Right. Things happen and, crazy stuff drops on YouTube and you got to react to it.
Most of the folks who listen to this podcast are writing books or publishing books. And I would love to know if you have any tips for them and on how to get like noticed on some of these websites. Because sometimes, at least in my experience, as someone who runs a small press, I've had difficulties like getting people to run things on these little news websites. Like, how can we stand out, Noel?
I really don't. I could think about that and maybe get back to you with something specific because all I can really do at this point is commiserate with you. It's so hard. Yeah. It's like I was saying, horror is so big right now that, sites like Blade Discussing, Dread Central, Daily Dead, Collider, they all get just bombarded with, press releases and things like that. And, things about horror literature, maybe just don't traffic as well as something that has a trailer associated with it or a star associated with it, and it's just, it sucks. Even if you have a great book cover, I'm not really sure what the key is to getting film sites to pay more attention to books. Guys like you can, hopefully turn that around, because your novella becoming a movie, really kind of says like, okay, well, what are some other great novellas that people should be keeping an eye out? What could be the next we need to do something? So, keep producing great shit and, horror sites will have to pay attention eventually.
That's a great line to end on, unless you have anything else you want to bring up before we end this.
No, I think that's great. I've had a great time, Max, and thanks for allowing me to be on your show.
Thank you for coming on. How can folks find you online?
You can find me on Twitter, Twitter, Josh_Millican. That's pretty much it for now. Hit me up there, message me there. Okay. We'll talk, we'll chat.
And that was Josh Millican talking about hood journalism. Go leave a review of the podcast on iTunes if you listened to the episode and thought, oh, golly gee, this was fun. Go pick up books that we publish over at GhoulishBooks.com. My new novel, Maggot Screaming, is available to pre-order right now, along with a bunch of other fun, spooky books. GhoulishBooks.com. We also have a Patreon, patreon.com/PMM Publishing. Go throw us a few bucks, a few bones, a few bucks or bones will do. Thank you.
Live spooky, die spooky.
Rest in peace, Max.